Hello, everybody. I would like to resume our discussions now. It's 11:30, so let us just resume our discussions. Dear colleagues, having discussed various aspects of the reflection, we are now returning back to sub-item 4A, overall approach to the listing mechanism. Yesterday, we started our substantive work on the same sub-item, which allowed us to take the general temperature of the states vis-à-vis the proposals made by the experts. We then went on to discuss three technical aspects, namely on inscription criteria under 4B, follow-up of inscribed elements under 4C, and we have just finished discussing issues related to the methodology for the evaluation of nominations. Now we are returning to discuss the overall approach in light of the technical discussion to make sure that we have not left anything important and to clarify anything that require further elaboration. In this session, I would like to suggest that the working group first revisit the overall approach that we discussed yesterday. And if time allows, I would like to deepen our discussion on how to ensure broader involvement of communities, groups, and individuals in the listing system. Here I'm talking about the 5 items that were actually proposed yesterday. So after we discuss the overall approach, we will come back to those 5 items at a later stage. And I hope this will help the following sessions when we discuss and adopt a set of recommendations of part 1 of our working group. In this way, I would like to proceed with our discussions, and would that be any opposition to that? If not, I would like to go directly into the discussions, but I just want to hear if there's any objection to the suggestion that I have just made. Okay, I see none for the time being, so let's proceed. Thank you very much. Now, let's talk about the overall approach. Now, my understanding is that there was no clear agreement to go fully with the so-called the fine-tuning or the repositioning approaches. Instead, the working group seems to wish to pick and mix elements from each of these approaches. This observation comes from the summary that I tried to offer at the end of the technical sub-items. For example, on the issues related to the inscription criteria, the conclusion seems to recommend the maintaining of all criteria for the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity, and also the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding. We will see about the register of good practices in good safeguarding lists in September. Since we agreed to delete criterion P9, but did not discuss other criteria under this mechanism. In other words, in this area, the working group considered best to fine-tune the current system. That is my impression. If you have any disagreement, please mention that later. Concerning the issues related to the follow-up of inscribed elements, the overall tendency is to prefer a somewhat more dynamic system that connects the 3 mechanisms to encourage enhanced safeguarding effort. In this way, perhaps we can say that the working group leaned on more on the repositioning approach. As regards the methodology for the evaluation of nominations, we had the discussion this morning, and my impression is that we more or less agree with 2 things. First of all, we have a very good convergence views about the extension files. And also, we had the relatively good convergence views about the gender-neutral language. But we still had a lot of discussions about outside information. On the question of outside information, the countries were quite cautious, but nevertheless, we had a very fruitful discussions on the use of dialogue mechanism, dialogue with accredited NGOs, and also the communities concerned. So that was the general impression that I got from the discussions on the individual points. Now, before opening the floor to receive comments from states, I would like to know if the Secretary has any comments on this pick and mix approach. Mr. Curtis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Indeed, the Secretariat has also understood that the preference seems to be of the working group, seems to be a pick and mix approach, trying to get the best of both worlds, and we have been trying to prepare the draft recommendations of Part 1 in that sense, and we have been sharing them with the members of the Bureau. Again, I think, in the obligation, and it's part of my duty, to bring to your attention, nevertheless, some possible implications of this approach, of the approach that seems to be being formulated and the direction we seem to be going, and particularly in the number of files to be treated each year, since this has been an extensive topic of discussion in various intergovernmental meetings. I'd like to do so in reference to paragraph 19 of the working document 3 and the table we put there. And it's important now to think of this going forward, because if the reform of the criteria were to be more extensive in the sense of the repositioning approach, were it to have been, we would have had much more time and resources currently engaged around the representative list that could have been liberated to pay attention to other requests that are coming through. And I'm not even going into the follow-up requests. That will be another question. Consequently, that would have given a higher number of nominations that could have been included in each cycle. And it's not only the Secretariat here, there's also the time needed for the evaluation body to read all the cycles and to discuss them properly. The proposal was set to set the number at half the number of state parties of the convention, trying to get at 90 present per cycle in order to ensure that each state, for example, could have at least every 2 years one file submitted. And this would be continuing to apply the priorities set out in paragraph 34, the current prioritization system. But what we are seeing now with the direction of the working group, it would not really change at this stage that process, which again is not only a question of resources, but also of time as a resource, as a very precious resource. The evaluation body, the committee and the Secretariat, the resources and time of those, we cannot see us going above the current number of files with the direction it's going now. And as I have said earlier, since the system we have, the prioritization system, is showing itself currently to be unsustainable. And since a high number of files, particularly multinational nominations, continue to be presented each year, and if we take into consideration that we have 180 state parties on board, we expect that soon it will not be possible to treat one file per state every 2 years, and let alone respond to the priorities set out in paragraph 34 of the operational directives. And so alternative measures would have to be introduced. And these could be, for example, to treat one file per submitting state party every 3 years instead of every 2 years, one national or one multinational file per submitting state in a given cycle, so that the duplication of multinationals would have to stop as a kind of other entrance, or to discontinue the principle of one file per state every 2 years and apply strictly the priorities as set out in paragraph 34 of the operational directives. And in that case, it would be based purely on the number of files a state already has enlisted, which would determine where it would get in terms of the number of priorities, rather than being guaranteed one every certain number of years. I do think it's important, and we felt duty-bound to point out these implications, because these must underpin the discussions as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curtis, for giving us this important information. Let us discuss those implications raised by the Secretary, and I now would like to open the floor. Ambassador Adam, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I would like to also to thank Tim for raising this important issue. But let me clarify a couple of things. If we look at the paragraph repositioning, and the first sentence says significant time needed for the evaluation body. I think here we have to be clear. This sentence is relating to the existing system of the evaluation body. Once again, I'm saying it over and over. We are reforming everything because of the increased number of files, because of the ease of the nomination process. So we're taking steps, definitely making the files to be, more files to be submitted. We have more international assistance. So to stick and relate everything to the existing system, and we have, again, I say, we have to be dynamic. Your Excellency, Mr. Chair, with all UN bodies, the way they approach for all projects, they're always, look at the mandate and the need. After they agreed upon it, after that, they go to the expert and resources. This is how we work in the UN bodies. We don't work, from the experts onward, in any project. So I think we have to have, we need to be flexible of the number of experts to adapt to the need. So moving forward, I think, we don't have other option by increasing the number of the experts with the evaluation bodies to accommodate, the changes that we are doing. So Kuwait thinks, that will have complication of cost, but I don't think it would have complication of time, because, when you say time is you're relating it to the existing system. Once you change that existing system, the time will be changed, So time, when we say time, is working hour based on number of resources, human resources. If you increase that number of human resources based on your need, obviously the time will decreases. So Kuwait thinks, if we are agreed to make, we believe that member states should have access to submit without limitation. We don't want to put restriction on them. If they have enough dossiers to safeguard their files, we as a UNESCO, as a convention, we should accommodate that. Let's not stop the safeguarding or stop the listing because we don't have, I think, expert. That's what's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On that specific point, Ambassador, I would like to give the floor to the Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Indeed, this is why I'm saying now what we heard yesterday was to keep the current methodology of evaluation, which is to reach consensus amongst the 12 experts. So again, the current methodology is that each expert reads every file individually, they come together, and they have a consensus. That doesn't allow for just increasing, that methodology doesn't allow for just increasing the number of experts still won't resolve that if each expert has to individually reach each file and each one has to come together. So indeed, this is why I'm alerting that the methodology has its advantages in terms of geographic distribution, equity among NGOs and member states, and it was developed. But if we keep going that way, then even adding more experts, we still have to get them each to read and then come together on a consensus. All that methodology needs to change. But that is why I'm emphasizing that the time is there. What we have heard, however, if I may, and as the chair summarized, there was no appetite to change that specific methodology, and therefore I'm alerting the room to this issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that Ambassador wants to come back, but before that, Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but if Ambassador wants to come back on it to follow on the same discussion, please go ahead.
Thank you for your understanding, Ambassador Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tim, for your clarification. Yes, I understand that, the room has to stick with the number, the 12. But I think from yesterday to today, there are a lot of things came. We decided new things. So, this new thing since yesterday, put us in a situation. If we stick to the existing system, we will end up with the same issue later on. So again, to me, it was just to clarify that, since yesterday and today, there are few things that we decided. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Colombia, for your kind time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Colombia, would you like to take the floor?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much, and my pleasure, dear Ambassador. Because I had that doubt as well, so I wanted to hear out, because not necessarily the number of experts will make more efficient the decisions, and we have seen it in many other scenarios in UNESCO. But then my question, actually, I wanted to ask the Secretariat what could be, because from the different discussions, is not very clear to me what will be the answer to give more time for the evaluation body, because if we want to keep the quality of the nomination forms, if we want to keep the quality of the discussions of the experts, I don't know if there's a clear answer to take also your words again, Mr. Secretary, about the best of the both worlds. What could be the thing that we could decide to have more time for the nomination, to lower the workload and try to solve this, that I think all the countries, we don't like it at all, only having one nomination. I mean, when you are reaching in intangible heritage, you are reaching intangible heritage. So it's a little, we really want our communities to be out there and to show their heritage and their creativity. So what could be that answer? Thank you. Or that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your intervention. That is a very important point, but at the same time, could I ask Brazil if I can give the floor to Mr. Curtis first before you take the floor? Would that be okay for you?
Of course, Mr. Chair, with pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and I thank both the delegates of Kuwait and Colombia for their questions, which are, in a sense, at the core of the matter. I don't believe we can have both worlds. We cannot have a more rigorous technocratic approach to technical and technocratic, if you will, approach to the listing systems, modeled very much on the 1972 convention, and at the same time have more communities and more elements represented and have broader participation. And that is why we can't manage both at the same time. And I think this is part of the core of this reflection. What kind of representative list is required? Is it a representative list that should be rigorously controlled in terms of safeguarding efforts and plans and inventories and all of these requirements, or should it be a lighter, repositioned safeguarding approach? If we think out of the box, as has been said, and think of a different approach, which is not a classic heritage approach in the sense of sites and monuments, then we have the possibility for a much broader number of files, but that requires definitely reducing criteria, definitely reducing the requirement on the files and the procedures. And that is a different kind of representative list, which some might consider is more truly representative rather than of outstanding universal value. So those are issues that have dominated since the beginning of the convention. That's the choice, really. But what we can't deliver is both at the same time. And I'm sorry to be a bit direct, but this is really at the heart of the question. And this is at the heart of the debates. And that can be my only answer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Curtis. Let me go on with the list of speakers because this is a very important discussion. Now, Brazil to be followed by Kuwait. Brazil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would like to go back to what we have discussed quickly yesterday, and to say again that we understand, of course, the the fact that there is an imbalance in the list. Many countries are underrepresented, etc. But I'll go back to what was said yesterday. We are a bit worried with this preoccupation of only with inscription. That's what is already happening in the World Heritage. We cannot forget that safeguarding protection is also very important. If we put all our energies in the inscription process, we will finish by forgetting a little bit the safeguarding, and this cannot happen. So, of course, let's treat the subject in seeing both lists, both aspects. Of course, okay, I understand many countries are worried with the fact that we need to inscribe more elements. And this is a fact, of course, especially for those countries who have few ones or almost none. But let's try to balance also this aspect of the inscriptions with the aspect of safeguarding, which for us is essential. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, before giving the floor to Kuwait and Colombia, can I just welcome Switzerland because he hasn't spoken for a while. Okay, Switzerland, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Pour nous, les effets des deux approches, ajustement et repositionnement, tels qu'ils sont décrits dans le document 3, ne sont pas très clairs. C'est des conjectures, des hypothèses. Est-ce que vraiment l'approche repositionnement aura pour effet une diminution de la charge? C'est pas sûr, c'est pas encore clair. Dans l'avis de l'avis de la délégation suisse, ces questions de méthode et les questions de ressources ne doivent pas être mélangées. Comme on a dit hier, améliorer la qualité des éléments, c'est une chose, améliorer l'efficacité du fonctionnement de la convention, c'est une autre chose, c'est des objectifs distincts. De notre avis, la qualité des éléments inscrits et la pertinence des listes doivent prévaloir. Ceci dit, il y a un vrai enjeu par rapport aux ressources. Nous sommes sensibles à ces questions. Donc, nous avons proposé hier d'établir un groupe de travail distinct, séparé, qui discuterait les questions liées au plafond et à la priorisation. J'aimerais saisir l'occasion pour revenir sur cette proposition faite hier. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Now back to the list. Ambassador Adam, please.
Thank you. Again, my apologies for taking the floor again. I would like, first of all, thank Tim for his reply. And also would like to echo what our colleague from Brazil, where they say it's really important. But back to the issue that, Tim, where he was, mentioning, it's either or. I think, Mr. Chair, we should not think just either or. No, we can have, middle ground. I think, we need to think outside the box. We need to think outside the box, to try to tackle this important issue. Maybe, some another ad hoc working group, some other people go more details. But in principle, we think, the evaluation body can have different groups representing each regional, and each group can do separate files. You don't need to have the whole evaluation body read every single file. And to give you an example, your Mr. Chair, and I would like to thank, the Secretariat for their thinking outside the box. This, meeting that we have, we had 30 plus experts, and to get this excellent document in front of us, what they did, they separated the expert to 3 different groups. And those different groups, they gave us this quality documents in front of us. So I think using the same approach, where you have different groups, covering all regional groups, can look into the files. You don't have to have all the experts looking at the same file. They can, distribute them, same as what we're having right now. So I think, having that mind and approach, yes, it will have financial, implication. We understand that, but the financial implication, should not stop us, from moving forward, because we did not exploit the financial, implication. So let's agree on the mechanism that we need to increase the number of files. We agreed upon that because we had, we are easing the files. We have the multinational files. We are making it more easier. But the concept of sticking that every expert has to reach each file, I think we need to think outside the box, make it to groups, each group representing all the 6 regional and UNESCO, and let them take the files, same as we did here. And again, my apologies for taking the floor, and I promise you I will not take it again, Mr. Chair.
Oh, you are very welcome to take the floor. No, don't worry about that. Now, just let me clarify one thing, because this was not really debated earlier. Your suggestion is to increase the number of experts maybe to 18 or 24, I don't know, but you will divide experts to several groups, and when one expert looks at a particular file, this expert does not have to go to the plenary of 18 or 24 experts, but to subgroup of maybe 6 or perhaps 9 experts to determine the evaluation. Is that what you are suggesting?
That's what I suggest, Your Excellency. Correct, we have it in groups, and we make sure that our criteria that each group covers the regional, and if we have NGOs, but we have multiple of them, all of them will read separate files, then we have the combined. So this way, we have several of the existing system, that's what I meant, and exactly what you elaborated on it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Curtis, on that particular point, can you respond?
Yeah, these things are feasible, but they're connected to other discussions. The involvement of the NGO forum, the involvement of broader platforms, the expansion of the current system. Financially, I think it was made clear, let us figure the system and then look for the resources. I fully support that. Some of them are human resources, but they are interlinked, these issues. And so why I'm raising the bell is some of the things that were discussed have implications on the other ones. So nothing is off the table in that sense if the state parties agree and if we can deliver and we are given the resources to deliver. My comment is that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. With that in mind, I would like to go back to the list of speakers, but when you make a presentation, can you indicate your views about what Ambassador Adam just suggested? Because this has not been debated before. Okay, Colombia, to be followed by Cuba. Colombia, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So I have only three comments. The first is to thank Tim's answer about having the both ways, and I think in our document, in the number 3 document, in the paragraph 15, small b, they recommend a study to understand the impact of inscription in the representative list. And I think that will be very, after this discussion, something that we would like to pursue and to see what is the real impact. Because as the secretary said, if it wants to be more representative, more light list, or if it wants to be more thorough, we want to know what the outcome is. And I know that in Colombia, for instance, they're starting to reflect on that, because sometimes, and as I said in the working document, the expectations are not met, or the challenges are greater that we expected. So I think that will be a very good thing to have in mind for this discussion, and that maybe can help us further in time to understand this point. Regarding the safeguard and the attention that Brazil reminds us to have, regarding the safeguarding and to follow this purpose of the list. I think it's also very important for all of us member states to have stronger national politics. And I mean, I'm speaking from Colombia, but we have since 2010 an internal policy that looks after that quality. And for example, one of our criteria for submitting nominations for each whatever of the lists is to have already a safeguarding plan. So all the nominations that have been that are presented have already a process behind, and so that ensures that we have this safeguarding. But I don't know if every country can do it or if it's pertinent. I mean, they have to know, but that could be an interesting thing to consider. And finally, regarding the proposal of His Excellency the Ambassador of Kuwait, I have a little worry about, a small worry about the proposal, that it's to make sure that there's a diversity of approaches to the nominations, and of course that the final decision will be taken by all of the members of the evaluation body, even if it has subgroups at the beginning or whatever. Just a small note. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Cuba to be followed by Norway. Cuba, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et justement, c'est une question très importante pour nous. Nous avons nous exprimé hier concernant la préoccupation. On partage la préoccupation de la tendance de plus en plus dès qu'il y a plus de candidatures multinationales. Et pour nous, c'est très important de garder en relation et en équilibre, parce que pour tous les pays, il n'y a pas les mêmes conditions pour présenter, pour raisons historiques, géographiques et des autres, de présenter des candidatures multinationales. Et nous devons garder la place aussi pour la priorisation des candidatures nationales. Et nous devons garder un équilibre, parce que bien sûr, quand on avait prendre ces décisions concernant la stimulation des candidatures multinationales, et c'est d'autres moments, c'est d'autres époques. Concernant et nous devons continuer à réfléchir comme on va garder, comme on va assurer qu'il y a un équilibre entre les dossiers nationaux et les dossiers multinationaux. Concernant la proposition de notre cher ami l'ambassadeur de QA, il y a une question que je voudrais souligner, que c'est justement, nous devons garder l'équilibre géographique aussi à l'intérieur de l'organe d'évaluation. Pour vous connaître, nous avons des experts par chaque région, et nous avons des ONG aussi par chaque région. Et si on va augmenter les numéros des experts, nous devons prendre en compte l'importance de faire cet équilibre ou d'un système de rotation qui permettrait à toutes les régions, d'une façon ou d'autre, être bien représentées dans les sillons de l'organe d'évaluation. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. But I'm sure that Ambassador Adam was saying that the geographical balance among the experts will be maintained in his proposal. But anyway, let me go ahead with a list of speakers. Norway to be followed by China. Norway, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We know that we are discussing the listing mechanisms here, but we would like to remind that there are more roads to safeguarding than nominate elements to the representative lists. And the list is already taking a lot of resources of the Secretariat, and the convention is an imbalance, in relation to the urgent safeguarding list and the register. We would rather like to see more or other mechanisms based on the underused potential of Article 18, as we talked about yesterday, to give new mechanisms to safeguard living heritage. And also, I would like to remind that the periodic reporting system is also pointed at the lot of roads to safeguard ICH. So maybe that could help as well. Thank you.
Well, now we have China to be followed by Japan. China, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to very briefly respond to topic on the participation of the community. As we understand that the ICH safeguarding is a joint effort by multi-actors, and each of the actors should take its role to contribute to the overall efforts in the safeguarding of ICH. So we should enhance the collaboration and complementarity among the diverse actors or stakeholders. And the nomination is also the one of the specific means for the states parties to implement the convention. It is the obligation and responsibility of the state party to do so. So as described in the operational directive, the states parties are requested to ensure the widest possible participation of the communities, groups, and individuals, as well as other all stakeholders, to each and every stage of the nomination process. And first and foremost, the communities are essential participants throughout the whole process. From the very beginning of the preparation, elaboration, the planning, and implementation of the safeguarding measures to the nomination, and also the after inscription implementation. So each and every stage. So we would like to highlight the role of the state parties during the nomination process, because it is their obligation to submit the nomination. So we would like to highlight this obligation of the state party to ensure each and every stage of the nomination process to be very effective, and to ensure it is the state party to ensure the widest possible participation of the communities as well as NGOs during this process. So we would like to highlight this one because, well, when we're talking about the dialogue process, as you just proposed, Mr. Chairman, to open the direct dialogue with the communities or the involvement of NGOs in the dialogue process, we do believe that we might be not quite sure to do so, because we still believe it is at this point it is still the obligation of the states party to do so. So this is my brief response to the topic just now. And now I would like to turn to the overall topic of the listing mechanism. As I just mentioned or highlighted, and the nomination is one of the specific means for state parties to implement the convention. So we should always take in a open approach when we're talking about the listing mechanism to encourage more state parties to submit their nomination, and we were happy to see their elements to be inscribed on the lists for the purpose of the convention, and which are very clearly described in the convention articles. And we don't mean to change the current evaluation mechanism, but we would propose a adjustment to the evaluation work of the evaluation body within the current mechanisms, which will be like this. First, we would like to propose to designate the evaluation of the request for international assistance to the Bureau of the committee, because right now the request for the international assistance under $100,000 US are already examined by the Bureau. So taking into account the numbers of the requests in recent years, and also taking into account the nature of the requests, we would propose to designate the evaluation of the request to the Bureau, to the responsibility of the Bureau. And now we have the evaluation bodies to do the evaluation work on both those nominations for representative list and urgent safeguarding list and also the good safeguarding practice register. We would also suggest that since the current mechanism is that the committee would evaluate at least one nomination of the state parties within the 2 cycles, we would then to suggest that the committee to evaluate or examine at least 2 of the nomination files of each submitting states within 3 cycles. The 2 files will be one representative list and the other will be urgent safeguard list or good practice register. So that would be kind of a specific feasible proposal for the evaluation body to just focus on the 2 lists and the register, but put aside the international assistance request. So this doesn't mean to change the overall mechanism, but within the it doesn't mean to change the mechanism or to increase the numbers of the member of the evaluation bodies. So we just put forward this proposal to just hope to give you some insight, or maybe we just don't have to go into any details of this proposal, but just give you. We would just to give some insights or some consideration on that approach. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. There are some new elements here towards the end of your presentation. So perhaps if countries can also make some comments on those, that's also appreciated. Now, Japan to be followed by Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we want to keep the spirit of convention while we want also to increase the number of files. And as the ambassador of Kuwait has said, we don't think that it's like a black and white matter. So we were just wondering what is the real bottleneck for the time of the evaluation, etc. Because we can also try to increase the number of files by simplifying, as we said, the R2, R5, and maybe even the R3 without deleting the R3 or make it optional. So there is a number of ways I think that we can go. And concerning the Kuwait ambassador's proposal, we think that it's a very interesting and good idea. And we would add a little bit more maybe, as maybe we can have like, if we say 12 or increase a little bit the expert number, and we can divide it into subgroup as the Kuwait ambassador said, like 444, and they can debate within themselves. And then if there is like, if they are okay, they agree on a solution, the files can go. If they don't agree within them, the file can be debated extensively on the plenary. So we can kind of change a little bit the evaluation work so that we can alleviate the work of the evaluation and make more file proceed. I hope that there will be like discussion that can be a middle ground where we can find a solution between the two. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Now, Sweden to be followed by Poland. Sweden, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Curtis, for your direct and honest answers to member state questions. We understand the delicacy of this problem, and we are happy to see that we are many in this digital room that are engaging to come to terms with it. We do appreciate the willingness of all to find new and creative solutions. We agree with Brazil, Colombia, Norway, and others that listing is not the sole goal of this convention. Safeguarding and transmitting the intangible cultural heritage is. It is the responsibility of member states to protect the integrity of the convention and the collection of elements. The evaluation body and the secretariat, they are doing all they can to respond to this increase in nominations submitted by states. We believe that it is up to us, the member states, to lighten the load for them. Therefore, we would support the recommendation by expert, also mentioned yesterday, to limit the possibilities to submit new files for states that fail their reporting duties, and would also like to discuss other solutions that could create a better balance between the list. In this regard, a better geographical balance between elements could also be achieved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Poland to be followed by Estonia. Poland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank the ambassador of Kuwait for his creative solution for the experienced problem, and also add to what the representative of Japan has just proposed. This might be a good way to think outside the box. And however, it is not elaborated now. It's just a fresh idea that just came out today, and we need time to think about it. So if you allow me, I will just share my hot thoughts that just came to my mind when listening to this proposal. What is beneficial in the whole process of discussing all nomination files between 12 experts is that we reach the level of intersubjectivity in their opinion and in their recommendations that are given to the committee. Each expert individually assess the file and has his or her subjective opinion about it. But then this level of consultation between 12 of them gives this level of intersubjectivity, as we know that objectivity does not exist. And how to maintain this intersubjectivity in this proposal? I believe that we can go into this direction by sharing a number of files according to the regions, and that might be helpful. And by supporting regionally elected experts, by NGOs, accredited NGOs, by communities, by opening up a little bit the evaluation body to these other stakeholders that can be invited to this. And I would also like to support what our colleague from Japan just raised. In case when the regional group does not support the inscription or has problems regarding the assessments, whether the nomination file meets the criteria, then it can go to the plenary. And this kind of a procedure is widely accepted across the world when it comes to assessing different nominations in the research area, in the academia, in business. So I think that this might be a really fruitful solution, helping to diminish the workload on the 12 experts, and at the same time helping to bring more nominations to the evaluation. But again, this is something new. We have to definitely think about it in more details. Coming back to what Mr. Curtis just said, yes, indeed, we are between these two approaches, and I truly believe that there is no other way than going to the representativeness of the convention. We have spoken a lot, and we could hear almost an anonymous need to hear the voices of the communities and groups and individuals. This seems to be unavoidable. Indeed, safeguarding is the primary goal of the convention, but it cannot happen without communities, groups and individuals. They are also at the same level. They are the second part of the heart of the convention, as we know, or the second launch of the convention, at the same level as the safeguarding. So taking this into account, I would like to also invite you to think about how this may happen. Also taking into account that we cannot give more workload to the Secretariat. So this solution that I'm going to present is not giving the workload to the Secretariat, but it gives us more balanced view on the convention. First, I would like to come back to the diplomatic and the gastronomic metaphor from yesterday. Either you are at the table or you are on the table. I would like to ask, how do we truly want to engage communities if we give them a seat at the table, but at the same time, we give them the menu in a language they cannot understand? What kind of informed choices can they make? And what kind of conversation can we all have at the table if people invited to sit together cannot communicate? And I believe we all experienced this situation today and yesterday when we were waiting for the interpretation so everyone could follow what speakers are talking about. So nominations in the languages of communities, groups, and individuals are, in our opinion, a true, not pretended or mocked invitation to this conversation. And it is definitely a challenge, but the one we can solve and handle. And just to mention one practical issue that was also reported to me, how can we, for example, take the needs to translate the nomination into local language if we all know that countries are working till the last seconds of the deadline on the precise wording of the nomination. And if we look into the paragraph 54 of operational directives, where we have the schedule, we can easily see that though the nomination deadline is the end of March, and this doesn't have to be changed, there is still 6 months time till the end of September for the Secretariat to assess whether the nomination is received in its full form and contains all relevant material. So, for example, if states need, especially in cases of multinational nominations, more time to come back to communities and translate for their languages the nomination in the final wording, we may use this time frame. So there are, of course, many more solutions. I wouldn't like to take more time, so let me finish here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Estonia, but after Estonia, I would like to invite Mr. Curtis to make reservations, to make comments. Now, Estonia, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To follow the gastronomic metaphors, perhaps one of them could be also that you can't have the cake and eat it at the same time, because I think that also describes the situation that we are facing. I think some of us have embarked on this journey with a clear objective to do away with limitations and ceilings. But we also know that if we lift the ceiling, the building might collapse. That's another metaphor. And I think that it's unrealistic to hope that we would be able to find a solution that enables all states parties to present as many files as their communities would like to present, because the financial, operational, institutional implications are there. And yesterday we also spoke much about how we trust the system, how we trust the evaluation body and their objectivity and independence. And it's a lot of work that this evaluation entails. So we would like to add our voice to Brazil and Norway and Sweden, among others, who have underlined that listing should not overshadow other important aspects of a work of 2003 convention. And I also believe that if we, let's say, double the number of experts in evaluation body, it would not result in a situation that they would be able to evaluate 2 times more files, because it's this process itself is still takes a lot of energy and time also, and I do not think that it will be the magic solution that I would like to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Curtis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure I have direct answers to all of the issues raised, and I think there's some very interesting issues raised. But there's 2 points, I think, and as was said by the delegate of Poland, if I may make a comment, there is still a tension or a comparative. There's a shadow to the convention, which is the World Heritage Listing Mechanism, and this has been since the beginning. And when at the end of the expert meeting, I felt that maybe this convention might have been better served to have called one list the representative list and one list the safeguarding list. And having taken out the urgency, we wouldn't have had this connotation reinforced all the time. And it could be possible to have a representative list, which is just for representation and highly inclusive, and a safeguarding list focused on the safeguarding efforts. That was something that can be read into the convention. That is not how it's been applied. But there was also something else that I picked up from Norway and some other states. The convention is much more than the lists. And in reality, for me, the biggest success of this convention is the number of national institutions, plans that have been set up. 20 years ago, very few countries had programs in safeguarding ICH at the national level, and today many do. And this is really the great success of this convention. And the periodic reporting has been reformed and is showing very good success. We will be reporting to the committee that the Latin American region will have submitted at above 80% of the periodic reports, whereas a couple of years ago we were at 20% for the overall world. So we are starting to see great improvement in the periodic reporting mechanisms. So there are also examples where the mechanisms could be linked. So for example, states that have reported on their obligation of inventorying under the periodic reporting once every 6 years, and that be taken seriously, why not make it extremely light then under each nomination file so that a state can just merely point to its inventorying system? There are ways to lighten the representative list and make it about representative, or it stays as a safeguarding list. But this is the tension, which is, so we can increase the evaluation body, we can increase, if the resources are there and the agreements are there, we can increase subgroups and subgroups. But I believe that it's the nature of these lists that is also at stake. It's if the nature is to keep the representative list as rather, let's say, high cachet list, then there's no need to increase, because that is how you keep it high cachet. If the intention is to make it representative, then there needs to be a reduction in what I call the technocratic aspect of file production, which may not be serving the purpose. That's, I suppose, the only comment I can make. These debates will have to go on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, in the afternoon, we can probably come back to what we should be recommending as a group, as our group. So at that time, we will probably touch on those issues. But at this moment in time, I would like to point out that there was a suggestion from the ambassador of Kuwait regarding the number of experts. And that discussion will continue. And also, there was a suggestion from China that Bureau should make a decision about the request for international assistance, and also 2 files every 3 cycles. That was actually proposed by China. And also there was a proposal about the obligation of periodical reporting in relation to the submission of new files. I think Sweden mentioned that. So those things will be there for discussions. But you know, we still need to have discussions about the fundamental direction, the basic direction that we are taking. So I will come back to this issue later in the afternoon in terms of the recommendations that we could make. And at this moment in time, can I just suggest, as I said earlier, to the 5 points in relation to the community involvement. Can the secretary show the 5 points? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so you have the 5 points on the screen at this moment. Now, I would like to deepen the discussions on those 5 points to make sure what can be deliverable from this working group. Now, many countries have made their points very clear in relation to the third point, which disappeared, the arm's length platform. Is it coming back? Okay. Well, anyway, I'm sure that it's going to come back, but we had lengthy discussions about the establishment of an arm's length platform, and many people have said that this is an interesting idea, but nevertheless, we need to have more details, and some countries did make some reservations. Do we need to add another layer for the follow-up process? That could, of course, require more resources. So there have been some discussions on 3, but there have not been much discussion on the other 4 items. I think we should have them on the screen. Sorry, we're having an issue. Okay. Is it? Okay, so you probably have the French version. That's okay. Okay, it's back. Now, I would like to hear more views about the other points like A, B, D, E. And in relation to A, I heard several countries supporting this item, but nevertheless, I just wanted to deepen some discussions on that one so that we can have a view, we can have a general observation about the extent to which we can see convergence on those items. So now the floor is open for your views. We have about 25 minutes before the lunch break. So please, I would very much welcome views from the states on those 5 items. Are you sure that you don't have any comments? Can I take it to mean that people are agreeable to those 5 points? Kuwait, please.
I'll make it also brief. I think, Mr. Chair, all those comments are, I think will add in value to the convention. Just, a small notes in part A, it's a great idea, but I also heard some member states yesterday, they're worrying about if they have several community language different ones. So I think, in that one, we need to also look into account, if we have different local languages, which one. So I think, that one, if we have that optional, so, if member state could not, reach an agreement in which language they want to use, or can cause a problem, is to have that, an optional. If member state wanted to have its community language, we encourage it. We encourage, local communities or community language in the preparation of the nomination. I just want to, I really in favor it on the part E. The creation of special forum that would allow the governing bodies of the convention to consult community. I think that's a very, very solid point. But that's my point of view on the 5 points, on the screen. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, there are also practical problems on there, but nonetheless, the spirit is there. Okay, now Poland to be followed by Romania. Poland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I have already spoken about the position of Poland regarding languages, maybe I would like to take this opportunity to reply to the issue raised by Ambassador of Kuwait. So there are clear recommendations from the experts that in the cases which are not so rare, as we know, when there are several languages spoken by the communities of inscribed or nominated elements, states parties together with the communities, and this cooperation between states and the communities is needed throughout the whole process, no matter the language. They may together agree to provide the nomination in one or several of the local languages spoken. So I think as the whole nomination process is based on the cooperation and consensus and dialogue between states party and the communities, I cannot imagine that the matter of languages cannot be part of these processes. And of course, when we spoke about these different languages, they can also be enhancing communication in the so-called arm's length online platform or observatory through the mechanisms of automatic translation. And thanks to the pandemic, maybe it's only the only point we can be grateful for the pandemic is that these advanced technological solutions are really developing very fast, and so we can really use them also for this case. And also in the cases when we need some additional funds for translation, we can use intangible cultural heritage fund, especially for the countries with these financial constraints. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Romania to be followed by Colombia. Romania, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the matter of using the community's language or putting there on the website and the nomination file of the form in our language, we think that it could be a good idea. And I don't know exactly how other states work, but we definitely first have the file prepared in Romanian. And then, of course, we translate it because that's the easiest way to work and involve directly communities. And it would be great that this document would be also on the UNESCO website for our communities to have it in the lastingly. About the possibility of a network of inscribed elements for sharing safeguarding experiences, I also think that our communities, groups, and individuals would definitely benefit from the chance to learn more directly the experiences, especially of other communities from other states in the region and beyond. And I have to tell you that, of course, there is already that particular type of experience, because sometimes our communities want to do inventorying. They go and they look on the representative list, trying to find elements that are similar with the ones that they want to inventory. So there is definitely an inspiration and engagement thanks to the similarities of some elements. But I think sometimes the communities don't have the experience to get through the jargon of the, of course, nomination forms. And if they could get more direct experiences from their peers, I think they could benefit from that. And also, I would also have a proposal for how to create such a network. I think a good starting point would be to take into account the great instrument that was just created last year by UNESCO, which is the Dive into Living Heritage, the interactive visuals, because this was a great instrument to show exactly the connections between concepts, between elements, between different fields, domains of the convention. Of course, that is necessarily, and it's very important for the showing the connections between ICH and SDGs, but also shows the interconnectedness of elements. So I think that could be a starting point to create such a network. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, Colombia to be followed by Brazil. Colombia, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would like to join the colleague from Romania in her first statement, because we do the same in Colombia. We translate every nomination form, and sometimes we have it, well, once we had it also in one of our indigenous languages. So I really believe that this would be a great opportunity to have more material online and to look for this multilingualism, which is very nice. And most of the time we have it anyways. So I think that would be a very, very good idea. I will switch to French parce que avec le point C de l'établissement de plateformes en ligne indépendantes, je crois que là, on a aussi un petit problème de fonctionnement, comment ça va fonctionner avec les communautés, parce qu'il y a plusieurs communautés aussi qui, si c'est quelque chose de communication directe, il y a beaucoup de communautés qui n'ont pas d'accès à Internet. Alors, par exemple, en Colombie, on a les grandes villes qui ont un accès parfait, mais on a quelques endroits et surtout où il y a beaucoup de patrimoine immatériel, où il n'y a pas de connectivité. Alors ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on doit tenir en compte, mais bon, c'est vrai que toutes ces plateformes sûrement vont marcher dans ce sens. Et finalement, avec la création d'un forum spécialisé permettant aux organes directeurs de la Convention, bon, c'est un peu la même chose. Et un autre forum, je ne sais pas si on commence à créer beaucoup de choses, et plutôt, ça serait une meilleure idée de commencer à travailler ou à élargir les outils qu'on a déjà dans la Convention. Et aussi, comme ma collègue de Roumanie l'a dit, par exemple, Diving Living Heritage et ce genre de plateformes qui sont super complètes peuvent peut-être s'enrichir ou se traduire, etc. Mais pour finir, en Colombie, on est sûrement super concerné pour la participation et pour avoir plus de participation chaque fois de la communauté, et que tout le processus, soit de nomination, soit de la sauvegarde après, bien sûr, soit fait de la main de tous les acteurs compris, soit les communautés qui portent ces patrimoines immatériels, mais aussi des États ou des autorités responsables. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. Okay, now Brazil to be followed by Jordan. Brazil, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Très rapidement, en ce qui concerne les points B et D, nous sommes entièrement d'accord. Ce qui concerne le point A, l'utilisation de la langue de la communauté dans la préparation des candidatures, le Brésil ayant beaucoup de langues indigènes et des communautés très spécifiques, en principe, nous serions favorables. Mais il faudrait voir exactement la procédure concrète de ces points-là pour ne pas poser d'autres problèmes déjà à un processus d'évaluation qui parfois se révèle compliqué. C'est-à-dire, en principe, oui, mais nous aurions besoin de plus d'informations. En ce qui concerne le point C et ce serait plutôt le cas d'avoir une plateforme élargie qui puisse réunir la participation de communautés pour le suivi de la viabilité des éléments inscrits et permettant aussi aux communautés et aux organes directeurs de la Convention de faire cette consultation. Ce serait une plateforme nécessairement élargie, mais ce serait quand même une seule plateforme. Je doute à propos de créer une plateforme indépendante après un forum spécialisé, c'est-à-dire peut-être on pourrait commencer avec une seule plateforme pour essayer de traiter tous ces thèmes-là. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, Jordan to be followed by Poland. Jordan, please.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes.
Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to reflect on the issue of languages and dialects, especially the indigenous languages and dialects in certain areas, you have, I mean, state parties have always official languages. For example, in the Arab world, it's Arabic, and certain in other areas we have also hundreds and several indigenous and languages and dialects that also considered as repository of cultures. And I mean, utilizing the indigenous languages in the safeguarding plans, in the also in nomination, I think is a very wonderful idea. That should be I think that the communities, groups, and individuals will be very proud that their language is used in the implementation of the convention. But we have to be very careful. I mean, regarding the contradictions between the official languages and the indigenous language in this concern. And in this case, I think this point should be and it should be written precisely so that we consider also not only the official languages used in certain countries. For example, in Africa, for example, there are hundreds and thousands of languages that are not part of the official languages used for diplomatic relations, etc. And I feel that for the intangible cultural heritage, it's very important to use and utilize the indigenous languages. In this case, we conserve and preserve the endangered languages and the related intangible cultural heritage elements. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Poland, and after Poland, I would like to make some observations. Poland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add to this discussion, as our distinguished colleagues from Brazil and Jordan raised also some observations. What I believe and what is our perception of this solution, and it of course may differ from the perception of other delegates here gathered, is that the submitting files in the languages of communities is not something that is giving an additional work to the evaluation body in any case, because evaluation body must operate in English or French, and that is clear, but it is honoring and enhancing the role of the communities on the level of the convention. And it helps to also encourage them to take more active role in periodic reporting and monitoring processes. And in the spirit of the also operational directives 81 that says that they should fully benefit from the standard setting instrument, how they can fully benefit if they don't have their files in their language. So also, as operational directive says in 120, we should focus while publicizing and disseminating information on the elements inscribed on the lists, on the values and meanings of ICH for the communities concerned. And again, we have these prescriptions in the operational directives, but how can we make it being introduced if we do not help the communities and engage with their own languages? And maybe one slight point, we are not talking here about the legal classification of language, official, indigenous, endangered, but we are only talking here about the language of the communities concerned. So maybe that will be helpful also in order not to open the box with the legal status of the language, but just to focus on the language that is used by the community for the safeguarding of their ICH. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, on the basis of the discussions we've had, well, maybe Mr. Curtis can provide some advice if I say something wrong, but my impression is that on the question of language, in principle, there has been no opposition. But many people was talking about the need to elaborate a little bit further on the actual modalities of this particular thing. So my impression is this should not disappear as an item, but nevertheless, that this requires further elaborations. That's one thing. And as far as B is concerned, I haven't heard any straightforward opposition to this. The audiovisual tools is a very useful instrument to get more information. So there was no strong opposition to that. Therefore, I would like to maintain this as an item here. I cannot say that this was agreed, but nonetheless, as an item, it should stay. Now, the other three, because many people are saying, well, don't create another layer of dialogue, another layer of networks. So perhaps those three things can be combined into one single platform, because after all, when we create a platform, this doesn't have to be tasked with a single job. It can also have other functions at the same time. So my impression is that C, D, and E can be combined into one suggestion, touching on several different aspects. That is the impression that I have. This is a very rough summary of the discussions we have had. But if there are any views which are contrary to what I said, I would very much like to hear. But before that, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, if I may, I'll just come back to the functionalities of the second part, C, D, and E, indeed, as you said. There's a sense here where perhaps all of these issues are about creating a platform, which could be, so one side of that is the use of the platform and the purposes it serves, but of course we must think of the running of it. And indeed, creating one platform with different functions would be more efficient. Although there could be a platform which dedicated to networking of inscribed elements, where those who are the communities identified in the files would be able to share experiences on safeguarding, but that might not be the same composition of participants for C. But certainly for E, that would also work. So indeed, it would be more cost efficient, but there would be a cost required. And I hear talk to the member states who discuss these issues at the executive board and at the general conference. These require posts to maintain, but it's quite feasible. So C, D, and E, C has some issues around the role it would play. But in the running of it, yes, they could be combined. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 5 more minutes. Okay, well, let me just conclude this discussion for now, and we will come back to some of them, at least in the afternoon, when we talk about the recommendations. Now, on that basis, I am told that ICHNG Forum, a very relevant body in our discussion, is ready to offer a statement in support of the global reflection on the listing mechanisms of the 2003 convention. I now invite Ms. Janet Blake, a Persian Garden Institute for Living Heritage, representing the steering committee of the forum, to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairperson, for giving the floor to the ICH NGO Forum. We have been following this debate very closely, and we are pleased to hear that our potential contribution towards implementing the 2003 Convention has been referred to a number of times. And we are fully ready to support this important global reflection on the listing system and state our readiness to cooperate with states parties in their efforts better to implement the convention generally. And we also appreciate the proposals made for the capacity building for NGOs to do this. The NGOs accredited to the convention enjoy a range of expertise, global knowledge, and diverse experiences to draw upon that can make the forum a valuable partner in this process. and some of the potential roles that accredited NGOs, working, of course, with states parties and other relevant actors, could play in this endeavour include the following: supporting and engaging in dialogue with states parties, communities, groups and individuals, and other non-state actors. Gathering, sharing and disseminating experiences and information on good practices related to ICH safeguarding. Supporting the evaluation body in its work, using our networks on the ground and our own specific range of expertise. Conducting studies along with other relevant actors on the impacts of safeguarding, inscriptions and other issues. And finally, undertaking studies to support the Secretariat in its work, such as the mapping of accredited NGOs and their expertise. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Blake, for expressing the willingness of ICH NGO Forum on behalf of the accredited NGOs to play an active role in the reformed listing system. Thank you very much. Now, I would like to close this part of the discussions. In the afternoon, I will try to explain what I see as possible recommendations in the future. First of all, I will do it orally and then try to get reactions from the room. And after that exercise, we will have a bureau meeting at 3:30. The bureau will discuss what should be the conclusions of this group in writing. And after that, at 4 o'clock this afternoon, our bureau will propose something in writing. And then we will get comments on the written portion, the written paper about our recommendations. And that will conclude our work this afternoon. So let me start at 2 o'clock sharp to do that exercise. Thank you very much and bon appetit.